Una Herlihy, tell me, what one thing do you wish you'd have known 10 years ago?
Hi, Andy. It's great to be here. Thank you for that question, which is actually kind of a hard one, really, because there's so many things that I wish I had known 10 years ago. But I was actually giving my son a little bit of a pep talk the other day, and I told him exactly this. Um, I wish that I had known that it's okay if you don't have it all figured out. Because the truth is, no one really does, as far as I'm concerned. We're all just working it out as we go. And I think, 10 years ago, bearing in mind, 10 years ago, it was like 2015, right? So we were all just coming out of global economic. There was, people were a lot of, risk averse. Um, there was a lot of stuff going on that was creating a whole lot of change, so it's kind of very similar to where we are today, right? Just like different circumstances going on, but constant change and evolution. And I think at the time, so I was 10 years younger, I thought that you can't really make big career decisions, or that your ideas need to be completely, perfectly planned out before you could act on them, with every risk factor worked out in triplicate. But of course, that's just not the case at all. And I think what I've learned through, especially launching the indie list, is that you have to just trust your instincts and go for it. And you will figure it out as you go along. Like, we are hardwired to do that as humans. And if you don't know the answer, you go and find somebody who does. And when I set up the indie list, first of all, a lot of people said to me, "Oh, I had that idea years ago." Like, okay.
Hmm.
But the expression, like, a field never gets plowed inside your own mind. You actually have to stop talking about it, stop thinking about it, and just get on with it. If you have a good idea, you just got to act on it. So I would say there's never a perfect time to set up a business, but the best opportunities come along kind of when you least expect it, which was exactly the case with the indie list. And you take that chance and you adapt and you shape shift as you need to. You make some stuff up as you need to, but you trust that you will figure it out along the way. And I think when you kind of say that, it actually takes a lot of pressure off, right?
Hmm.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think you do figure things out. This isn't the same as bluffing your way through life, is it? This is about using your experience and the mental models that you have to make informed decisions, but actually accepting that you don't know maybe the answer to everything, and you'll tap into experience when you need it, and you'll make the best decision you can at the time. I had Carrie Rose on a couple of months ago now from Rise at Seven, and she has this thing about being, I think, 80% certain is the number. Oh, did she say 50% certain? I can't remember, but it's not 100%. She was like, you just get to that point and then you go, fuck it, I'll try it. And her view is that if you wait until you're 100%, you never do anything. So just do it. What's the worst that can happen?
Well, that's it. Do it less than 100%, and you kind of work it out as you go.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. I love that. And just like you say about the idea, everyone's had loads of ideas. My brother, probably 5 years before I'd ever heard of Friends Reunited, had an idea which sounded very similar to early Facebook, based on connecting with people who you met on your holiday when you were out on your couple of weeks in Spain and staying connected. I remember him coming home and telling me about it. I was like, "What are you going to do about it?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know what you do." It would just be great, wouldn't it? If you and like, but the way you talk, and then when Facebook launched years after Friends Reunited, you were a bit like, "That's a bit like what Paul talked about a decade ago."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I think sometimes as well, you need people in your corner to sort of prod you a little
Hmm.
bit as well, to kind of break that sort of the block that you have that exists inside in your own mind, and actually to help you see what you're choosing not to see within yourself, which is ability and grit and
Hmm.
determination and hard work. And you forget about those things, don't you, when you're kind of faced with these big decisions where you have to kind of take a little bit of a leap of faith. And I think, when the indie list started, first of all, there was a great idea at a perfect time. Um, and there was me and Peter, who, like, the two of us kind of came back together again, having worked with each other years previously. And we were just like, okay, let's do this together. So we kind of just sort of held hands a little bit and jumped into the
Yep.
void. And so it was great having somebody there in your corner who wasn't saying, you're crazy, or actually was saying, we're crazy, let's do it anyway.
You are crazy, but you're my type of crazy. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, I used to say to Peter at the time, this is probably a really crazy idea. There's probably very little money in it. We'll probably drive each other absolutely bananas. And, like, he was like, enough of the hard sell. Let's do it.
Brilliant. I know. I love that. I love that. So excellent. Well, fantastic. Thank you for that start. That's been great. Hey up and welcome to the Strategy Sessions. My name is Andy Jarvis and thank you for joining me on the Strategy Sessions today. Before we move on with Una's episode, I just want to tell you one thing. It's to give you the date of the next Seth Godin workshops. Seth Godin, the great Seth Godin, is doing workshops here in Ireland. Now, he is doing one in Dublin on Thursday, the 3rd of April at the Guinness Enterprise Centre. That's from 1 till 5. And he's doing one on Monday, the 2nd of June, and that's going to be in Derry as well. That's 1 till 5. So if you want to come along to either of those workshops, they are in sterling, £265 a person. Don't ask me what that is in euro. I don't know what the conversion rate is at the minute, but it's 265 quid a person. But as a Strategy Sessions listener, you can have a discount on that and you can get it for 225 if you use the code EXIMO. All the links are in the show notes. All the details are in the show notes. If you want to come along to either of those two workshops, please do. We've run one in Belfast so far, and honestly, the feedback was incredible. Seth was on fire. I was hosting it. I did a little presentation about some strategy lessons from this podcast, but I learned a load just from working with Seth, from listening to him, from looking how he handles the group and the questions he asked. I was sat making probably as many notes as everybody there. It was a tremendous session and everyone got loads of value from it. Any questions? Just ping me a message. My details are in the show notes too. Happy to answer them on that or about today's guest, Una. Let's get back to the show and have a listen to what she has to say. Let's start off by talking about the indie list. You mentioned that a little bit in your introduction. What is the indie list and how did it come about? I know you've talked about Peter and the thought and the idea you had, but what was the problem that you were trying to solve with the indie list?
Wow. So I'll just like take us back to 2020. I had been working as a freelancer, gun for hire in the marketing services industry for about 15 years. And in March 2020, COVID hit. And, overnight, everything just changed. And, I went from having like a really healthy pipeline of work, great clients, long relationships, brilliant network, very, very happy with my freelance life, to the next day, all my pipeline disappeared, completely gone. The actual rug pulled out from underneath my feet.
You're giving me PTSD here, Una. It's like every freelancer listening is currently holding their chest going, do you remember waking up with that awful feeling going, oh shit, my business is done? Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember those days.
exactly. But, and I'm not, a kind of blindly optimistic person usually, but there was a part of this whole thing that I was completely fascinated by, exhilarated by. And that was, this was an unprecedented event that the whole world was experiencing at the same time. And it was going to cause huge disruption. And that Leonard Cohen line, which is, there's a crack in everything, and that's where the light gets in. And, I was really fascinated to see what kind of creativity would come from this disruption. And of course, it came at like breakneck speed, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden we started using, Zoom. I'd never used Zoom before March 2020. And, things started to pivot like pretty much immediately. And I was kind of happy enough here in my garden in Kilkenny. I was getting the emergency payment. I'd had a really good year the previous year, and I'd been freelancing for long enough to know that things eventually find a level. And there is a new normal that people get used to, and the sky does not fall in. So I was okay about it. I wasn't freaking out too much, but I was sort of observing from the sidelines to see what was going on and what was emerging. And I was really inspired by what was happening on the front line with all the healthcare workers. And, I wanted to kind of help out in some way, shape, or form. I think we were all bound together by this collective kind of altruism. We wanted to sort of help out, but we were very limited in terms of what we could do because, we have this, I think it might have been a 2 kilometer rule to begin with. We couldn't go near anybody. We were really sort of isolated. um, so at the and so around that time, I started thinking, look, I'm one freelancer who this has happened to, and there must be hundreds, thousands more like me. And So I had a really good network, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to start putting together a list of people who are available for work. I really didn't think too much about it. But I thought, look, this is an opportunity for me to give back in a small way to an industry that's been really good to me. So I put a post up on LinkedIn one night. It was the Maybank holiday weekend. I was here swinging in my hammock in Kilkenny. And I said, okay, I'll just put a post up on LinkedIn and offer to help out. And I thought very little more about it. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, Holy Mother of God, what have I done? I've offered to help and now I have to. And I found myself like, I had probably about 100 messages in my LinkedIn folder, one of them from Chris Byers, who I'll talk about in a second. But um, I kind of thought, wow, there's something in this. I've kind of hit a seam
Hmm.
that that made me feel that actually there is something that I can lean into here, where I can add value in a way that I want to, and I can use all of my experiences working as a freelancer to meet people where they were, psychologically where they were, and really kind of help out. And so I continued to do that for a few weeks, and then I found myself like back at my desk pretty much full time. And I thought, okay, I can't really walk away from this now that I've started to build it, but I don't know what it's going to become. And to be honest, I didn't really know anything about freelance platforms other than Fiverr and Upwork, and
Hmm.
I definitely wasn't that. Um, and um, and then Peter contacted me. So Peter and I used to work together back in what is now BBDO, and he was the media director. I was an account handler, and he said, "Listen, can I go on your list? I'm now self-employed." It's like, absolutely, come on the list, no problem. And then we started having a few conversations about the model, and we were saying there's definitely something in this. How can we take this from a pro bono idea into something that can actually become a business and generate real value for the members that choose to come to us, but also provide real solutions to the clients that we work with. And so we sort of thought, look, this is an idea for and of its time. Let's give it a go, and we'll kind of work it out as we go along this journey. And so, kind of back to the previous point, we didn't really think about it too much. We didn't research the market at all. We just sort of thought, look, here's an opportunity to do something that's kind of meaningful and hopefully will make us a few quid along the way. So we launched it then on the 4th of July, Independence Day, boom, boom,
Hmm.
4th of July 2020, as a place where freelancers like us, myself and Peter, like you, Andy, people who choose self employment. So we launched it as a place for people to find work, but also to network, to learn, to feel part of a like-minded community, because I guess, I had worked as a freelancer for 15 years before that, and I chose the freelance route because I needed more freedom and flexibility in my life at that time. But it wasn't a walk in the park. There are aspects of self employment that are fantastic, but there are other parts that are really, really tough.
You can pick which 20 hours of the day you want to work, can't you? It's like brilliant. You can choose.
Yeah,
Thanks.
exactly. Yeah, I think I probably, for the first few years of my freelancing career, I probably had a lot of freedom and flexibility, probably too much freedom and
Yeah.
flexibility. Um, but for me, would I like it was really tough. There was no indie list at the time, 2005. There was no indie list. Recruitment agencies didn't want to know me, and I had to do it all on my own. The only people really who were freelancing in the marketing industry then were creatives, and so
Mm.
I was an account handler, and I was a bit of a kind of a sort of a weirdo going out working for myself. Why would I do that? It's ridiculous. But of course, I am sort of that type of person. When somebody tells me it's ridiculous, I kind of have to just go and show them that it's not.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how the indie list started. It started from a good place, a genuinely good place, a really kind of passionate desire to help people out during really dark time. That is still very much the beating heart of what we do. As long as as long as we're involved in the indie list, it will remain like that.
Hmm.
We see people who choose self employment, and we tip our hats to them because we know that it's a tough road, and it requires bravery and chutzpah to do it. And when we see people who have made that decision, we go, okay, we're here for you. We'll back you all the way. We may not necessarily be able to get all of you work, but what we will do is provide a sense of community and support to help you start out strong.
So there's a link to the indie list in the show notes. So if this sounds like something that you're interested in, have a look. In terms of qualifying criteria, because we do have listeners from around the world, I think about 60 different countries, amazingly. Now, there's a big skew towards the UK, Ireland, and the US, but still, 60 countries-ish around the world. I'm happy with that. Are there any qualifying criteria to be part of the indie list, just so we don't get people from Bhutan trying to join if it's
Sure,
not for them?
sure, yeah. So look, we are exclusively and unapologetically concentrating on the marketing sector. So we've got 1,600 members now in our talent pool. About 25% are creative services, so copywriters, art directors,
Hmm.
graphic designers. About another 20% are the production and craft end of the creative services. So photographers, producers, videographers, motion graphics, all of that great stuff. Probably about 35% and growing are within that digital marketing space. So everything from kind of highly technical web development, UX, UI,
Hmm.
SEO, digital strategy, right through to social media, community management, content management, and content strategy. And then the remaining sort of 15 to 20% tend to be very senior marketing consultants that have kind of specialisms in certain areas, whether it's CX or brand strategy or AI or whatever, the strategists and project managers, and essentially people who have kind of operated at a very, very high level over the course of their careers. And the further up the ladder they've gone, the farther away from the thing that they're really passionate about they've found themselves. So they've kind of gone, right, I'm done with the corner office and the lovely view. The 9 to 9 can,
Hmm.
you know
Yep.
what, and they want now more kind of more agency over their lives, and they have chosen a situation where uh, work fits into their life, not the other way around. So that's a kind of a makeup of our community in terms of how we vet people. So we're never going to put somebody into a role where we can't stand over them, where we can't vet them. So we look for people who are highly experienced in their particular field, who are endorsed within their network. So we'll always
Mhm.
be looking for references and so on. We're looking for people who are really, really dependable. And we're looking for people who are sort of built that way where they're able to kind of immediately go in and add value and be a positive person to work with. Our model is very much kind of I suppose what you'd say white glove or high touch. So right now, if you're coming to the indie list as a customer looking for a marketing consultant or a graphic designer, unlike something like Fiverr, where you will go in and self-serve that and be presented with an app, with a list of maybe 200 people that you have to select from. We do all that curation and that selection. So rather than going back to the client and saying, here's the 20 people who might be right for the job, we're saying, here are the 2 or 3 that we think are spot on for the role.
Mhm.
So we're looking at things like their experience, their case studies, a portfolio of work if they're creative, um, and their testimonials or client references. And I suppose the reason that we're saying we're unapologetically and exclusively in the marketing sector is that that's our background, that's what we know. Clients come to us because sometimes they might not know what good looks like, but we do. And
Mhm.
so they sort of trust us to propose the short list of people that are right for their particular roles. And beyond that, we're looking for sort of, most of our clients are English speaking and English speaking markets.
Mhm.
So English as a, either a first or second language is really important. And that's sort of it. I mean, look, we always say, the best thing that you can do to get work from us as a freelancer on our platform is to create and maintain an absolutely brilliant profile, because that's what the client sees and that's what will make you jump out.
Mhm.
And for those people who take time, to invest in creating that profile and to keep in touch with us and keep involved with us, that then increases their chances of getting work with
So I'm going to be right back because I'm going to improve my profile while we're talking.
us.
Just to, I'm not going to do that there. So I mean, what I'm interested in is that you could have just made this straight into everything you've just talked about there, a matching service, Tinder for marketers or whatever, right? But the community element's also really important to you. So, how do you foster that community element, and why is it so important for you and the marketers who are part of the community?
Yeah, well, look, it kind of goes back to my own experience of freelancing when I started out in 2005, not really having a clue, to be perfectly honest. But for me, building a community isn't just about like gathering people together, although that is lovely when that happens, and we've tried to do that as much as possible. But it's more about giving people a sense of belonging, because as I say, when I went out, first of all, in 2005, I wanted more freedom and flexibility, and freelancing is brilliant for that. But, I had to go and find my own path. There was no place like the indie list. And I
Mhm.
said recruitment agencies weren't really interested in speaking to me, but they don't really kind of do community at all anyway. But I found it really lonely, really, really lonely. And honestly, a lot of the time I felt like a real outsider, and I felt like a bit of a loser. And you have to balance the rough with the smooth when you decide that you're going to choose self-employment. And actually, looking back now, I think that whole experience made me a lot more resilient and really brave. And I think they are qualities that freelancers tend to have in spades, probably more so than their counterparts who would work in full-time jobs. But you know, when we launched the indie list back in that first wave of lockdown, yes, the immediate goal was to help freelancers find work. But what drove me even more was knowing that the work part of it was only one part of the equation, and the trickier, sort of messier stuff, like figuring out your finances. Like, honestly, the amount of time I spent staring at the ceiling when I was like freelancing, thinking the bailiff was going to be at my door the next day, just like catastrophizing about
Mhm.
stuff like that. so taxing. But that, and building your network and constantly kind of making it work for you, and marketing yourself, and dealing with the isolation. So I knew that, from my own personal experience, that these were the areas where actually we could make a real difference to our members. And that's why community became a really central focus for us. So our mantra, very quickly, we kind of landed on our mantra, which was, our role is to help our members earn, learn, and connect. And we wanted to create a space where independent talent, freelancers, self-employed consultants, solopreneurs, whatever you want to call them, could access more opportunities for work, but also feel really supported and feel part of something bigger. And it is, I think, this shared sense of belonging and shared experience that creates a sort of a sense of community. Now, this business of, if you build it, they will come. Like, it's hard. It is hard to build the community aspect of what we're doing, because actually, I still think it's a really important thing to do, even if people don't always show up.
Yeah.
And they don't, because actually, a lot of the people in the indie list and other platforms, and I think just in general, they just kind of go, look, just show me the money. Like, give me the work. That's all I'm looking for. It's great that you do all this lovely stuff, and I see it all on LinkedIn, and good for you, but actually, I want the work. And you have to accept that. But I don't think it's going to stop us building community, because that is the beating heart of what we do. So I think anything that we do, if we're doing events, we have to kind of lead with free beer. I think then maybe we'll have more success. But
Definitely love a free beer.
free beer, yeah.
Do you know the hardest thing I found about going solo when I became an independent was pitching. So I'd been involved in pitching for years, working in agencies, and you don't win 100% of your pitches. I don't care who you talk to, you don't win 100% of your pitches. And I think I lost many more than I won. So maybe, I don't know, I never did the numbers, maybe a 15-20% win rate, whatever. So it was all right, it wasn't great. But every time you lost a pitch, you could always rationalize a reason for it. You were sometimes pitching other people's stuff. Some of the ideas weren't yours, and you had a team, and you were all you'd give a little bit on that to get that idea in, and whatever. And if it didn't win, you're always like, oh, well, it was that bit of the idea. I knew we shouldn't have put that in, but that whatever. Then you go pitching for yourself, and there's nobody else in that discussion. It's you. It's all your ideas, and it's all you as a person. And then you get the feedback, and it's like, didn't really buy into the idea, and didn't really see. And it was just like a real personal attack. The first time I lost the pitch, I was like, wasn't the pitch they were attacking? It was me. And you quickly had to develop that thick skin. You were like, it's not me they're attacking. It's just the idea. If someone doesn't like it, and it's like, you've just got to move on. You've just got to move on. But it was a real mentality shift in the first 6 months to be like, wow, this is not personal. And it was really hard to get my head around that at
It was
first.
so, yeah, it was so, I mean, I would completely agree with that. When I was working for myself, in those 15 years, actually, a lot of the work that I ended up doing was agency selection and pitch management.
Yeah.
And I was up against this company that had the whole area sewn up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told this man this story multiple times, and we are pals, but he was my kind of big competitor at the time. His name is Brian. And I used to be tendering for big contracts. And at the end of like every tender, usually on a Friday afternoon, I would get an email saying, "Thank you for tendering. Unfortunately, you've been unsuccessful in this tender." And the winning consultant was Brian so and so. So I just go, bloody Brian, and so much so that my kids used to sit down. It was around the time of kind of Harry Potter and Star Wars and all of this, and my kids would say to me, "Mom, who's your favorite Dark Lord? Is it Voldemort, Darth Vader, or Brian Sparks?" So, but I told Brian Sparks this story many times, and he gets just such a laugh out of it.
And who was it?
Oh, it was definitely Brian
It
Sparks.
was always Brian. Yeah. Is it one of those where you have to be careful what you call him because your kids think his name's actually fucking Brian? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is it
Brian,
Voldemort,
I
Darth
love
Vader, or
you.
fucking Brian? And he
I
was like,
love you,
"Stop it,
Brian.
children." It's
uh,
usually we don't do personal insults on this podcast unless we give someone a right to reply. But in this case, fucking Brian, fuck off. Yeah. Apologies to anyone listening in the car with their children.
with
Hello,
the
we'll
children,
get back to
yeah,
you. Sunshine
yeah.
and light later.
But
Sorry.
it was so funny at the time. But you're right, like it, and you used to kind of have to lick your wounds, didn't you? Like
Yeah.
for a while, but
But you have to do it quickly sometimes, don't you? Like the email comes through sometimes on a Friday afternoon and ruins your weekend. But sometimes the email opens just as you're going into the next pitch, and you're looking at it and you're like, oh. And you've got to reset really quickly because you're like, right, in 10 minutes, I've got to go in there and pretend I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you're
yeah,
like, really, it's an
really tough,
emotional
really
roller
tough.
coaster being a
It is an
freelancer.
emotional. And then the other thing, which has become kind of much more prevalent now, is no feedback, which is even worse. You just
Don't get me
like,
started.
yeah, you just hear nothing. It's like crickets, and that's
Yeah.
just appalling. So, yeah, we try to kind of address that
Yeah.
situation by putting a little bit of pressure on our clients to give actually constructive actionable feedback. But a lot of that is out of
Seemingly.
our hands.
So what's the benefit of we have a lot of people listening to the show from different backgrounds, some in-house, some agency, whatever. If you have a problem in an organization, you could hire someone to do it. You could hire an agency to do it, or you could pick an independent or a freelancer to do it. What's the value of going with that freelance market, that indie list that you've created, over, say, we'll just appoint an agency, we've both worked in them, or we'll just hire somebody? What's the value of using that community?
Well, look, I don't think freelancers are, an absolute alternative, like for like alternative with using an agency. Like agencies are brilliant. I come from an agency background. I see a huge benefits that they bring, but I also see the flaws in the model, right? And that's not a big revelation. We
Mm-hmm.
all know that the agency model is kind of, it needs a bit of attention, to put it politely. But I think, looking at your entire kind of ecosystem of suppliers is an important thing that companies need to do. And I think that the companies that are really winning right now are just are creating much more flexible kind of arrangements. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
that's what freelance talent offers immediately. But I think even aside from that, you know, the freelancers are awesome. At least the right freelancers are
Mm-hmm.
absolutely awesome, and the power and the value that they bring like are absolutely huge. So like first of all, you get instant experience and expertise. So when you hire it, and I'm talking about like, top tier professional freelancers, those experts and specialists who are at the top of their game, as opposed to freelancers who are on a learning curve. Because, quite honestly, our clients are not interested in paying for the learning curve of others, nor should they be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always a red flag for us, and it's a bit of a red line issue for me. Is when somebody comes and they say, "I'm really interested in that role because it's an area that I want to get experience in." Like, sorry, no, that's
Yeah.
not going to happen. So we're talking about top tier professional freelancers who are really at the top of their game. So when you hire a person like that, you're bringing in somebody who's already an expert in their field. So there's no learning on the job. They've done this before. They've done it across multiple industries and multiple projects. And so businesses get to tap into that top level experience immediately without the overhead of training or long onboarding periods. So that's kind of like an immediate like win. And then other things, I guess, that freelancers do is because they're brought in for a specific project or piece of work or set of deliverables, they are like they don't kind of get sucked into the office bureaucracy, the layers and layers of, politics and
Yeah.
all of.
You've got to go and get your health and safety certificate or your first aid certificate renewed this month. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So they just don't, they don't get bogged down in all of that nonsense. Now, that's obviously it has to happen if you're an FTE, but they're just concentrating on results. So they're built for results. They're built for agility. They don't get bogged down with all those layers. They come in, they sort of assess what needs to be done, and they just get on with it, which means that businesses can, if they're doing it properly, be much faster, much more responsive, much more adaptable in a way that traditional structures often
Mhm.
can't match. Um, Another really great feature of working with freelancers is around the perspective that they can bring in. So I heard a great expression the other day, which was fish don't see the water they swim in, which means that when you're deep in the day to day,
Mhm.
you kind of lose the perspective. So when you bring in a freelancer, you're bringing in somebody who has worked across kind of multiple industries with lots of different people, lots of different companies, lots of different cultures. And that gives them a very unique, diverse, and deep kind of experience. This very kind of rich cake of insight is built up from that type of experience. So they then bring in a lot of fresh ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of working, really innovative approaches. That when you're sort of stuck in that day to day, you don't lift your head up and get to see that. So that's a real
Mhm.
benefit from bringing in that sort of outside perspective in. And then I think, I suppose it's a bit of an obvious one, but it's very cost effective to bring in a freelancer, even somebody who's like charging top top rates. But you get to access that top talent without the commitment of a full-time hire, so you can have the best in the business, but you don't have the long-term salary commitments. You don't have the cost of benefits or any kind of like really onerous recruitment fees. Plus, you mitigate your risk, because if you're bringing in somebody on a very high salary on a full-time job and it's not working out, then actually offboarding that person is
Yeah.
very laborious, onerous, costly. In this situation, you sort of get to kind of pay as you go, or kind of,
There's
try
a risk
before you buy.
mitigation to it, isn't there? Yeah,
Big time,
absolutely.
big
Yeah.
time. So what we see all over the world, and the States is the market that we look at, because it's kind of, a huge market obviously and very innovative. But the figures are saying that by 2027, like 1 in 2 people in the US will be working in some sort of freelance capacity. They might be doing it in conjunction with a part-time job.
Uh-huh.
They might be, Ubering, so this includes kind of gig workers.
Mhm.
We're not talking about the gig economy. We're talking about the knowledge economy.
Yeah.
Um, but that sort of shows you all the sort of the trends that are happening in the world around us. So the biggest companies in the world, like the likes of Meta and Google and Unilever, they are adopting, they're really rethinking HR and staffing, and instead of relying solely on in-house team, they're kind of blending in-house with contingent talent to create this kind of very agile, very adaptive, high performance, very flexible teams, so that you can scale up and down as required. And so that's we see this being very much a trend that we're leaning into, a trend that's not going away, because that that increased dynamism, that increased adaptability, and that kind of drive towards having the best people for the job, are things that I think are really kind of the wind that is behind us as we kind of look to kind of grow out this business even more. Um, and I think what we also see is that we do a lot of research with our members on a yearly basis, and we see that increasingly people are happier in self-employment, um, notwithstanding the challenges associated with it, notwithstanding the kind of the lack of benefits that they might get versus being.
Chasing invoices and all that sort of fun
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It really comes across that you're having, I'm not going to say a lovely time, because that sounds like I'm trying to belittle what you do, but it sounds like you're really enjoying building the indie list and challenging yourself almost in a different way from being a freelancer now into running a company. Is that taking a mind shift for you to get there?
Is that terrifying, Una? Yes. Yeah, it is. It's look, I love it. I feel like when I set up the indie list, I feel like my hand found its glove, if that doesn't sound too
Hmm.
corny. But I absolutely love what I do, and I used to, and having gone from wanting more freedom and flexibility, feeling that I had no agency over my own career when I worked in an agency. Um, so coming from that to having all this freedom and flexibility, probably too much freedom at sometimes, um, going on this journey to make myself more resilient while at the same time feeling like an outsider, feeling like a bit of a loser, feeling ultimately that I was unemployable because I'd worked for myself for so long. I thought like nobody would ever give me a job because, you
Hmm.
know, I kind of even couldn't sort of tell you what my skill set was. But when I set up the indie list, I realized what my skills were, and I realized that, you know, my sense of purpose was something that really could become the foundation for a business that could really sort of provide real solutions to customers and really sort of make people feel supported in their careers. And that was something that I never experienced when I was a freelancer. I had to do it through building my own networks, and I built some amazing kind of, loose networks in the 15
Hmm.
years that I was working as a freelancer. So I do absolutely love it. Now it is very challenging, like so we're trying to service the business, we're
Yeah.
trying to grow the business, we're trying
Hmm.
to fight off, we're trying to build a moat around the business to defend ourselves from
Hmm.
AI. Um, we're trying to manage, we're trying to build a community, we're trying to foster real relationships. So there's like bloody so much, and there's still only three of us.
Yeah.
And but
You say only three of us. You said to Peter, your early pitch was, I don't know if this will make us any money. Yeah, it's now employing three people. So, so like you say, the fish doesn't see the water. Sometimes you don't always see those successes around you.
no,
That's
look,
fantastic. Yeah.
I know. Look, we've done like we've got 1,600 members now. We've generated like 5.5 million in new revenue for our members. Like that's revenue that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Hmm.
We've put on, I'd say, probably about 50 different webinars where we've brought experts in to talk about the sort of the trickier aspects of self-employment. We've developed partnerships with different clients where we're literally putting money back into our members' pockets through discounted home and health insurance.
Hmm.
We've provided opportunities for training, and we still feel that we've only just gotten started. And Peter, um, my former business, well, he's co-founder, former business partner, because he left at the end of last year, which was devastating. I when he told me, at the end of 2023 that he was going to retire at the end of 2024, and I was just like fingers in my ears. It's not
Don't believe it. It's
happening.
not
Yeah,
happening.
I
It's
don't
not
believe
happening. Yeah.
it. Yeah, but he did go at the end of 2024, and I mean, like last year was such a scary year for me personally
Hmm.
because I thought, look, I can't do this. I can't do this on my own, and I'm going to fail, and I'm going to be, I'm going to be, people are going to see me as as the sort of imposter that I am, and it was all this like self-limiting beliefs, and I kind of had to have a few sort of stern talks with myself, and you know and then look, one door closes and another one opens. So Peter left, and I brought in Rebecca, and Rebecca is now, she's a force, she's an absolute force of nature, and she's just an amazingly empathetic individual who is just like really, really good at what she does, but she's also really, really nice as well. So that kind of works really brilliantly for us because, look, you know, work is hard enough.
Hmm.
You want to be surrounded by people who are really great to work with, and so we have a tiny team, but we're all kind of in it together, and we're figuring it out as we go.
We've almost brought you back to where we started then, which is about figuring it out along the way. So I'm going to jump into into my final question, really, more than anything else, which is about what would you recommend people having a listen, follow up with a book, a podcast, a resource, or something or other? I might even push you for two here because I might see. I'm going to see what you recommend first, and then I might ask you for a second one.
Like a lot of people, and I just touched on it there, you know, I've struggled with the whole area, you know, of imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
that constant inner voice that's telling you that you're not good enough or somebody else has all the answers. And so last year Peter was leaving the business, and honestly I was absolutely terrified, and I kept on telling myself that I wasn't capable, that I was going to fail, and the noise inside my own head was louder than anything else. But I was listening to a Rory Sutherland interview. It might have even been with you, Andy, but he
Let's say it
mentioned,
was. Let's say
let's
it
say
was.
it was an interview that you did with Rory Sutherland, which is the best podcast I'd listened to last year. Check it out.
I've always liked you, Una. Always liked you.
But he mentioned a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, and I have it here beside me, The Inner Game of Tennis. And it was written in the 70s by this tennis coach called Timothy Galway. And so I kind of thought, look, if Rory Sutherland is recommending it, then I have to get it. So anyway, I picked it up over Christmas, and I'm still reading it at the moment. I've got about 3 books always on the go. So there's my inner game. I've got Rory Sutherland there, and then I've got this other one, The Inner CEO by Shane Craddock. But the 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 story really of this book is that it's really kind of helping me to see the biggest obstacle that I'm facing, which is the story that I'm telling myself. So that, you know, what it's saying is that success isn't about really trying to prove yourself or really kind of trying harder or working longer hours, although sometimes you kind of have to do that. But it's actually more about silencing that inner critic. You know, it's about trusting yourself, and if you can do that, cut out all of the noise, it will lead to better outcomes. And I think that sort of lizard brain, that
Hmm.
inner critic, has a huge amount to answer for. And I think, you know, the reason that I would be recommending that anyone who's listening to this would read it is that that kind of type 1 brain, that inner critic, you know, it makes us kind of be really fearful of change. It makes us kind of, you know, avoid any sort of failure. It's very judgy, and all of those things can hold us as marketers, as freelancers, as business owners or business leaders. It can hold us back from taking those risks and being bold and being daring. And we need to be, because
Hmm.
we need to be. You know, AI is here now. It's not the future, it's here. We need to take some risks and power through and be really daring and try out new things and trust our instincts. And that's why I'm recommending that book.
So I'm not actually going to ask you for two because I thought you might recommend something that was very freelancer focused, and then I was going to ask you for a second book that was maybe more general. But actually, that book is for everybody. I've not read it. It sounds an absolute beauty. So, The Inner Game of Tennis. There'll be a link to that in the show notes. So, look, Una, want to say thank you very much for your time. If anybody wants to contact you, is LinkedIn the best way?
LinkedIn, Una Herlihy at LinkedIn, or send us. My email address is una@indielist.ie. Check out our website, and yeah, we'd love to talk to you if you're a freelancer at the top of your game who's interested in getting great work with fantastic clients. Then definitely sign up.
Just to go over the time limit that would set, one of the things I liked about joining the indie list was the level of rigor that went into joining it. And don't get me wrong, when you're busy and you're like, oh, God, do I have to fill this in? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? But actually, when you realize 2 references before you could get onto the list, this is what keeps everything else. This is where the quality is. So having to get 2 references who'd say nice things about you, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a struggle. But so if you're considering it, do it, put the effort in, put the time into it, and do it properly. Don't half-ass it.
Yeah, big time, Andy. Big time. Thank you so much, Andy. Really
no
appreciate
problem.
it.
Thank you for your time.